I want to introduce you to Mike G. He's waving to you there. Mike is actually the author of Filling the Gaps. This is a book that he just published using Scripture Publishing. So Mike and I met as we worked on this book together. He just got this published in June, and it's an awesome read for any of you that are interested in learning more about functional movement, biomechanics, keeping your clients injury-free, pain-free, finding out the base foundational reasons why your clients are not getting better, whether that be because they are in pain and their pain isn't getting better, or because they're working on something and they don't seem to be improving. This book talks about why it's important to go to the base foundation of why that's happening. And in addition, Mike has a certification program. His program's called ACM 360, which stands for Assess, Correct, and Move. I'm going to give him a chance to tell you a little bit more about that. I just got certified in it, and I can't say enough about it. When we get done talking, I'll give you a little bit of my experience with it in the last couple of weeks as I've been doing the assessments and working with it. But listen, we're always looking at what's new in the industry. We're always looking for things that are working, and this is pretty spectacular. I'm pretty excited about it. I've enjoyed working with Mike. I love what he's doing, and I just wanted to share it with you guys. So I'm going to introduce you. Hi, Mike. How are you?
Hey, Cal. Hey, everybody. Nice to meet everybody.
Mike, just give them a little bit of your background, just so they know where you're coming at as you're coming into this idea of functional fitness and talking to personal trainers about this.
Okay, yeah, sure. Thanks, Kelly. Again, Mike G is my name, and I'm a certified athletic trainer, and I've worked in sports medicine and physical therapy for 25 years as a consultant now for corporations on injury prevention. But my whole background and story started with a knee problem I had since I was 10. Multiple surgeries until I was 18, and all it was arthritis, and that was supposed to be an old person's disease or condition, and I was 18. Long story short, by the time I was 27, I had considerable pain in my knee, even though I was athletic, lifting weights, doing all the things I thought I was doing right. I was working in sports medicine, learned what I needed to do for rehab and all that, and it wasn't helping me. I thought I needed another surgery. At that time, the doctor said, look, you're too young, you need a knee replacement, and that's the only surgery we can perform. And that was where I really kind of had an epiphany, and I thought I can either sit on the couch and wait till I'm old enough to have a knee replacement, or I must have missed something along the way. And the one thing that I missed, and this is really what started my journey in functional movement training and finding those people that understood this a little more, was that I could never touch my toes, and I didn't know what that was, what the point of that was. Just that it was someone that everyone laughed about, that how tight I was. And then I got into college, and I realized that it's a genetic thing. I'm just tight, so why bother stretching? And again, my book goes into a lot of that, the mindset behind that. And what happened was, once I started learning the mechanics of a toe touching pattern and why I wasn't able to touch my toes, I started unlocking a lot of other dysfunctions and understanding movement patterns from a whole different perspective, more than I learned in the physical therapy and sports medicine world. We understood joint by joint approaches, shoulder joint, knee joint, but we didn't understand how that, we had concepts about that it was tied together, but we never did anything about that. We worked on those specific joints. So when I really got working in my profession, I really went down a different path, and I started understanding this movement patterns were really the key to unlocking some of the body's potential and correcting dysfunction, correcting posture. And I went down that rabbit hole pretty deep, and this is where ACM kind of started, was the idea that there's the fitness industry is really exploding now with functional training. So in 2000, when CrossFit kind of came into the picture and kind of brought functional training into the mainstream, I said, wow, this is great. Someone else gets it, and they're promoting functional training to the average person. But when I started looking at it, and I had clients coming to me who were getting hurt in CrossFit, I said, something's wrong here. There's a big part of this that's missing. And it was because even though we're doing functional training, which is just a lot of range of motion, heavy movement type stuff, it doesn't mean we're going to get functional. In fact, what happens is we just get more dysfunctional, and where our movement patterns are dysfunctional to start with. So I said, wow, the fitness industry has a lot of influence, because they're promoting the whole idea of aesthetics and people look great and they do these great movements. I want to do that. But when I watch people doing functional training, they're just getting more dysfunctional. And so that's where I said, I've got to step in and I've really got to become that thought leader and promote as a mentor to the fitness industry what good functional training is and what it really means to assess movement patterns before we load people into the right exercise. All exercise is great if you're doing it the right way and you're doing it for the right purpose. And that's what most people don't quite understand. It's a progression or regression from where we're at. So that's really what ACM is. Assess the movement pattern, correct it, and then get people moving. And doing it in this order, it keeps people moving healthy and progressing them into where they need to be. You can get very strong and athletic and muscular, but you can do it in a functional way or you can do it in a dysfunctional way, and one leads to pain, the other one doesn't. And that's really what my focus is with ACM.
It really comes down to that, pain or no pain, injury or injury free. It's going back to those, not just looking at the issue, but why the issue, not just the pain that the person's having, but where's that pain coming from?
Yeah. One of the things I like to say, Kel, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things I like to say is that, and being a consultant with corporations on injury prevention, and as an athletic trainer, one of our main focuses is on the prevention of injury. All the signs of injury are there long before the symptoms occur. And this is where the part of, well, I don't have pain comes in. So most people out there have some aches and pains or maybe previous history of injury, but they're not debilitated and they're still working through some little tweaks. But the dysfunctions are present. We just ignore them, and that's what we can't ignore anymore. And if we can correct them ahead of time, we're not dealing with these surgeries that people are having that. In fact, there's many stories I've mentioned a few of them in my book about people that I've saved from having these needless surgeries just by correcting some dysfunction and understanding that the dysfunction is what we're addressing, not the symptom or pain, long before the symptom and pain comes into place.
Great. And you're in this group, Mike, there's a lot of people that are familiar with Gray Cook or who have gone through the FMS certification.
And I did too.
Many people that have connections with Peter Goskew and have used his pain-free method. I know you have connections with both of those. Talk about your experience with them and how ACM is a little bit different than that. Yeah,
awesome. Because I have a high esteem for Peter Goskew. I worked for Pete 20 years ago as one of their main therapists at the clinic when it was just taking off. And I got involved with Pete because it was the first person that I came across that started talking about things a little bit different than what I learned in sports medicine and physical therapy. And I said, this makes sense, the idea of posture. And I was one of the top therapists. I was probably one of the therapists there that had more credentials than most of them. So I was very intrigued with this process. The challenge I found was, and working there for many years, it was very simple. It was very easy to identify a person's bad posture. What I learned was a few things. Most people didn't know they had bad posture. You can look at anybody and they have a shoulder that's elevated and they see themselves 100 times a day in a mirror, but they never saw that a shoulder was elevated until you pointed out. So to get them to be accountable or to engage them in their corrective approach, they had to know that their body was off. And most people don't know that. They don't feel it. Second was, just because someone has bad posture didn't really mean anything to me. It just meant that I didn't understand why they had bad posture. And so it almost became a throwing the darts in the dark kind of approach, or a shotgun approach. We'd give them a bunch of exercises with the best intention, but we weren't quite sure why they had bad posture. And you could speculate and you could test it, but I felt like a lot of people, I wasn't getting through to as much people as I wanted to. And there were times when I saw a therapist would write a 13 exercise program for somebody, and I thought, gosh, that just seems so obscure. The idea is getting the most benefit out of what you can do. So I went down that rabbit hole further, and I read about Gray Cook, who's the developer, him and Lee Burton, with FMS. And I said, this guy is speaking my language, and he's talking about it from the physical therapy aspect, which I really honed in on. And I said, wow, this guy gets it. And I said, I'm going to go learn about Gray Cook and Lee Burton. And I actually met Lee Burton at a conference I was speaking at and talked to him about this. But I went through the FMS, got certified, and I said, this is great. And then I started using it. And I talked to all the trainers in that room that day. What do you use this for? What do you use this for? And nobody really knew. that we could identify dysfunction. But if anyone's gone through the FMS and any other certification programs out there on assessing function or dysfunction, the full squat, the overhead squat is like that go-to assessment. But what was frustrating was I didn't know if it was ankle mobility, I didn't know if it was hip, I didn't know if it was thoracic, and it doesn't tell us. And so I said, man, there's got to be something else. And I started really breaking down movement patterns and spent a lot of my time looking at joint mechanics, understanding Mike Boyle has a great rendition of the joint by joint approach. And obviously most of us in this field understand that the complexity of human movement isn't as simple as that analogy, but it really helps educate people. And what I needed a few things with ACM. I needed something that was effective, but also something that someone else, my clients, could understand and feel, and something that gave us a picture to the deeper dysfunctions that are kind of seen in the higher level movements. And when I talked to Lee Burton at a conference, I asked him about this. I said, look, I really want to bring this concept of FMS into the general population, into ergonomics and employee safety. And he said, well, Mike, it wasn't really developed for the average person. It was developed for high-level athletes. And then in talking with people that are certified at the college systems that I'm involved with, they said, well, yeah, we use FMS, but it's just a number. We don't know what to do with it. It doesn't give us a corrective approach. And I said, well, that's what my expertise is. I know about dysfunction. And so that's what ACM was built on, was the foundation, like Kelli mentioned earlier. It's not functional movement. It's fundamental. There are fundamental patterns that our body has to be able to achieve to go to another level. And that's really where ACM starts. And then the corrective approach is understanding the mechanics or the reasoning behind why we have those types of limitations or dysfunctions, and correcting that so that we can start moving. And that's the whole focus of ACM. And in my background from Egoscue, the inception of FMS, and how I've kind of blended that knowledge to a program that I feel is the root of getting people assessed correctly, and then having a purpose or a focus on their exercise program, whether it's through ACM or it's your own corrective approach. At least you have something to go back and test and not waste clients' time. And then the great thing was that I always frustrated with, because we would take calls from our clients at Egoscue, and they would have questions about an exercise or their pain or something, and we would say, do you feel any better? Well, what do you mean? We meant their posture. Is your posture improving? I don't know. But now I can call someone and say, hey, has your ankle mobility improved? Let me test. Can you touch your toes yet? Yes, no. They're objective measures that people can actually feel and own. And that's what the ACM really is about, is giving people ownership of their own stuff and promoting that through the assessment.
And I'll add another piece to that in a really simple way. It is all of those things, but one of the greatest things from a training perspective is it's really simple to implement. It's basic, yes or no, pain or no pain. The software is super efficient, and it's very easy to follow along. And what I also love is you finish the assessment in less than, I say 10 minutes. That's if you're having a conversation. Yep. And you email the client right from that moment the exact place where they're going to begin. And it's a beautiful PDF, very well put together, of whichever mobility place they're starting with, whatever the most acute dysfunction that's showing up, that's where they begin. And it's just easy. It's so easy. And the client can read it. They can see the pictures. They know exactly what they need to do. It's only a few exercises. It's not overwhelming. And it's something they can do every day, once or twice a day, prior to anything else that they do. And it's just working on those dysfunctions, those foundational movement patterns that have gone awry for whatever reason. So I love the simplicity of it, and how quickly and easily it's done on the trainer side, and how easy it is for the client as well.
When I started this, the thought was there's a lot of great modalities out there, and there were some gaps. That's what the name of the book is, Filling the Gaps. And it wasn't to replace, although I personally have replaced everything I do with this corrective approach. But if you're a trainer, if you're a therapist, a chiropractor, massage, I met a girl who's a fascial massage therapist, and she swears by it. I said, great. How do you know you're fixing your client? Took her through the assessment, and she was blown away. This is she has the 20th. She's 20th ranked in the world in jiu-jitsu, about to compete in the world championships in Vegas next month, and she's convinced she's going to win it. This girl is a beast, and she had some dysfunction, and she was so surprised by it. And then we related it all back to her injuries. But the goal with me was to develop something that could be augmented with whatever you're doing. And from a business perspective, look, you can do a 3-minute assessment, put the information in the software. It sends them a home exercise program, and now your client knows that you're taking care of them on both ends. Go back to your massage, go back to your training, whatever you're doing with them, but give them something that's going to augment what you're doing and promoting the healthy movements that these exercises are really going to do for them. And that was the whole focus of ACM, was to help be that gap that fills some of the stuff that's there, and you're adding value, which means you don't add time, you add value, and that's what clients pay for. They don't pay for the time, they pay for value. And a simple program that can be implemented quickly, not take much time, but have that big of an impact is tremendous value. And that's really what I feel like the biggest benefit of this program is from a business standpoint.
Completely agree. And I'll just share a story. I shared this with Mike right before we started recording. You guys all know that Graham just got here in June from New Hampshire. So ever since I've known Graham, he's had a bad hip, and he has told me about his bad hip accident that he had a long time ago. Plus he played semi-pro soccer in Europe for years. So his ankles are shot and his knees are not great. You know, the rundown of an ex-athlete. So through the years, he found a chiropractor that he really liked in New Hampshire, and he's been going regularly to the chiropractor, which is fine. He started swimming as his cardio, and he was doing that every day before work, and that's been his routine really for the last few years. So as soon as he got here, now that I have him here and I can crack my whip on him whenever I need to, I was really excited to do this assessment on him because I wanted to see where that hip dysfunction was coming from. Was it really this injury from so long ago, or was there more to it? And so we did the assessment, and immediately ankle mobility, the very first assessment that you do, his ankle mobility was pretty much none on the right side and very, very little on the left. His right side is, of course, the place where the hip hurts. So, you know, clearly there's some connection. And he's been doing these, just working on ankle mobility, these exercises that the ACM software spit out for him. And, you know, I show him how to do them, and we've been doing them. So here's the crux of the story. For the last few years, he has a motorcycle, and when he gets off the motorcycle, he's hobbling. His right hip really hurts when he's been on that motorcycle. He doesn't ride it for long periods of time, even short periods of time. He would get off and, you know, have that hitch in his step and be sore and have days of being sore after. So today he had to actually bring the motorcycle from New Hampshire here. And that's a 4.5-hour ride. So he's been worried about it. It's been a kind of a big thing. We haven't gotten the motorcycle because we're not sure he was ready to be able to ride that far. Well, today he did it, and he got home this afternoon, and no hitch in his step, no limp when he got off the bike. So I mentioned it. He goes, I actually feel great. He got in the pool and started swimming, and he did some laps when he got home. And he said, you know, he's sore in the sense of, I know I'm going to feel tight tomorrow, like I did something. It's like night and day. I can't even begin to tell you how great it was to see him be able to walk normally when he got off the bike. And he did his ankle mobility exercises before he got on the bike. He did some stretching that we've been doing, and he did it. So really simple, really effective, and I think it's worth knowing about, because those kind of changes that make a difference in your life, not just in your athletics or, you know, the things that you're doing that are performance based, just everyday life can change. And
this is the key. This is great that you brought that up. Was he had hip pain? That's where his source of discomfort and concern was. Everyone probably treated him for hip pain, but no one ever looked at the kinetic chain, especially the ankle mobility. And I'll tell you, I have 3 or 4 stories of people with the same exact answer. And I had, in the book, talks about a girl I saved from having surgery at 14 years old because no one looked at her ankle mobility or lack of ankle mobility. And she's 2 years later, success from it. But that's the whole point. Got to understand underlying dysfunction, not pain.
That's
awesome.
Right. So it's a great story. And, you know, I've done as FMS with him, and he can't do the overhead squat. And, he's got tight calves, and he's got, clearly it was ankle mobility, but it doesn't show that in the FMS. You're always looking at, where is it coming from? Is it muscular? Is it thoracic? Where is it? But it doesn't show you. So now there's something that's practical and useful for him, and there's already been some impact.
The great thing with ACM, this is what I keep doing now for years that I've been developing this. And I only rolled this out recently because I've been testing this. And I took all the FMS patterns and went through ACM and said, what I found in ACM, what would I be able to predict in this full overhead squat, the single leg step over, single leg lunge? You can predict higher level movement pattern dysfunctions by what you get out of the ACM, as well as anything else related to movement. And that's the beauty of the ACM. It's the fundamental patterns, because you can't run away from fundamentals. The functional stuff is different. And that's really the inception of that. Utilize FMS, great, but you'll have a better understanding of what's happening and why with the ACM, which takes only about 3 or 4 minutes versus the setup of the FMS and all that. And I was a big fan of Greg Cook. Brilliant man.
Yeah, brilliant man, and a great tool in the toolbox for the trainer.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this one is too, and I guess that's that you guys. That's why I wanted to share it with you, because it's a tool that I think is useful, and for a lot of you that are working in this realm and are really looking at creating a better life for your clients, not just fitness but wellness. I think this is something to look into. Follow Mike. You can follow him on Facebook. Mike, what's your website? Where do they find you?
Well, ACM360pro.com. ACM360pro.com is my website. I also have a Facebook page, and I do post a lot to Facebook. My Facebook page on ACM360pro, as well as my Instagram account. I'm actually, I think I have that under SportsMedX, SPRTSMEDX, but that'll change to ACM. Everything's going to be congruent with ACM360 Pro. But the Facebook page is linked to my Instagram, and I do a lot of posting on Facebook. So I really encourage people to join Facebook and offer your suggestions and questions. I post a lot of stuff related to some interesting ideas and looking at what people's response is, and kind of my goal is to change a paradigm for how we look at things and develop that network of people that also share that same goal and bring that to the forefront of fitness.
Awesome,
Cal. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate you hopping on, and you guys check it out on Thursday and follow Mike on Facebook.